Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. So yeah, hope everyone's doing good. It is Monday. It's actually the sun is out, so makes for a nicer start to the week. Well, I should say it's Tuesday. I had I had to take yesterday off for a doctor's appointment, and I was up in Bangor for that. And so while I was up there, I had a bunch of time, and I was like, well, I'll make it more worth my while as far as driving up there. It's about an hour drive. So I went to my favorite place, my home away from home. Surprise, surprise, and that is Bull Moose. And so I got some killer movies, and I was super excited, and I love that place. I got quite a few movies. I got one movie in particular, which today's show is about, and I got I've been wanting to get it for a while. So they have they have a great selection up there, and I got some really great exploitation movies and a couple other movies that I've been wanting to get. So yeah, so it was a pretty dark and dreary weekend, the last 4 days or so. But today it's nice to actually see the sun. So today's show is actually going to be on an older film that it's funny how I kind of got my or what motivated me to get this movie, and that is the original Crow, The Crow with Brandon Lee. This movie is I always forget that this movie is a lot older than I always think it is. It's from 1994. I I had not seen this movie in Jesus, probably without being much of an exaggeration. I don't think actually seen The Crow in probably like 15 or 20 years. I've always loved this movie. I remember when it came out. I remember the kind of the this movie was a phenomenon when it hit, and it really still has this massive fan base, and rightfully so. And it's funny because the reason that I bought this movie, I mean, I think it's just a great movie, and I'm going to really get into it. And after watching this the other night, actually last night, this movie it's kind of a masterpiece. But before I get into the actual film, I I had seen a bunch of press, or could say controversy, about a month ago. It was announced that there was going to be a new kind of remake or incarnation of The Crow, starring Peter Skarsgård, who was going to be playing The Crow. And Peter Skarsgård has been such a prolific actor. I mean, he was in the last John Wick movie. He is going to be, well, the last couple few years he was Pennywise in the It films. That was probably, those films are probably his biggest or his highest profile as far as making him a star. He's amazing in It. The sequel is kind of terrible. I was really disappointed with that. He's still really great in it. He was amazing in the last uh, John Wick film that came out about, yeah, just about a year ago, which is kind of crazy. So I saw that in the theater. Amazing film, one of the greatest action movies I think ever made. But he's incredible in it. He's going to also be in I believe, the new Robert Eggers movie, Nosferatu, which will be coming out in December, and he's going to be playing Nosferatu. And then he was also in another movie, Infinity Pool, that I did see with Mia Goth, that came out last year or 2 years ago, which is an amazing film, one of the best films that I saw that year. It might have come out last year. I've done. I've talked about that movie quite a bit. And then I believe he was in another movie, The Barbarian. I think he's in that also. I have not seen that movie. I am waiting to see that movie. There has not been any announcement or anything. That movie's been out for a while of where that movie can get where it will be available in physical media. I've heard that movie's incredible, but I have not seen it yet, and it's a pain in the ass with the whole situation a lot of the times around streaming movies because a lot of these companies are very reluctant in putting them out on physical media, and you don't get a chance to see them in the theater. So it is what it is. So it was announced probably about a month ago that there was going to be a new Crow film, and there was going to be this kind of reimagining, if you will. And Peter Skarsgård was cast as the Crow, and the Crow itself is a huge, huge movie. You know, it. I don't know. In some ways, it kind of gave birth to the whole kind of emo goth renaissance that we've had, and that still continues. But it's I'm going to get into the movie itself, but it's truly kind of a remarkable film. But then there's also it's also a franchise. There's about I believe three other films in the franchise. The second one I remember being kind of decent, actually kind of not bad. The rest of them are totally forgettable and dismissible and not very good. But I remember the second one being kind of decent, actually pretty good. I do want to see it again, but not, of course, not as good as the original. It's an iconic movie. It's probably the biggest role. Well, it is the film that kind of defined Brandon Brandon Lee's career, and there's obvious there's an obvious like black kind of cloud around that movie, and how he passed away during the filming of that movie. And but so it was announced of this new remake, and they released the photo of the new incarnation of what Peter Skarsgård is going to look like as Brandon Lee, as Brandon Lee's character, the Crow. And it, all intents and purposes, the photo looks, or at least this reimagining of the Crow, kind of looks terrible. They're kind of making him out, and again, I try to be open to new ideas, new things. I like, trying to take older ideas and, put them in maybe a more of a contemporary light. I'm all about that, try to be very supportive of that. But I just don't think it really works, at least in what they have released so far. He, the Crow, kind of comes across as this kind of gangster thug character. He's got tattoos. He's all ripped, and he's all like, you know, kind of clean cut in a strange way. I don't know. It's very strange, but not. It doesn't look not even close to the iconic image of what Brandon Lee did with the character. But anyway, there was a lot of talk about this photo, and a lot of people were really, kind of upset about it. And I ended up doing a show because I just kept hearing about it. I did a show where I talked about kind of the strange parallels between Brandon Lee, the actor, and the Crow, and when he passed away, and then also Heath Ledger and his untimely death before the release of The Dark Knight, which was his most iconic role. And I believe they're almost the same age. And again, it's one of those situations that it's just, it was an awful situation, kind of in a shock. So I did a show about that, and I also mentioned this new kind of concept that they have for the new Crow, which I believe is coming out in June of this year. So that, I don't know, it's funny, that kind of rekindled my interest of like, what, I have not seen The Crow and I literally could not remember the last time I saw it. So I was like, okay, I want to see this. It would be a perfect movie to buy on Blu-ray for obvious reasons. And I was at Opera House Video last weekend, and I almost rented it on DVD, but then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wait. So I decided I'm gonna wait because I'm gonna be up in Bangor this coming Monday, which was yesterday, and I'll and the doctor's appointment was pretty close to the mall, right next door, pretty much to Bull Moose. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go in there and buy some movies, and the one I want to buy that I want to seek out is to try to buy The Crow. And so I found it right away. I got a really amazing deal. I picked this up for $5. I couldn't believe it. It's got not a whole lot of special features, but there is one like kind of documentary about the movie that's actually pretty decent. There's a commentary track or tracks. I don't. I have this thing about not really checking out commentary tracks. I don't know why. I think it's because, and I know they're very very good, but a lot of the times I don't watch them or listen to them. I could just because they end up re visiting the movie or talking over the movie, and I think that's why I don't end up doing it because I could, I want to if the movie's on, I want to watch the movie and not be distracted. So maybe that's why I could just turn off the picture and just have the audio play. But I at the end of the day, commentary tracks I think are pretty fascinating. Sometimes they're really incredible. I have checked out some, but pretty decent special features. The the mini kind of documentary is like about 35 minutes, and it's actually pretty decent. Um, but I watched The Crow last night, and I was blown away. I was completely floored by how truly kind of a remarkable movie this is, and how this really is, one of those iconic roles that made a deep impression culturally on the populace. Like it really is, and it is the Brandon Lee had a short but very great, a really great career. I feel he, you know, of course, the son of Bruce Lee, and he was in a slew of action movies, but he was also a very well trained stunt fighter, and and also obviously a very well trained martial artist himself. So, but I think he really had more of an ability, or had a real multi-layered kind of ability. He wasn't just an action star. I think he had some really good acting chops. I think he could, he had a lot of depth as an actor. He wasn't just an action star, even though he definitely is an action star. But I feel like as an actor, I think dramatically he showed that he had a lot more depth than say your average action star that when they're on screen they just have a lot of charisma. He actually had some really great abilities and attributes as an actor. I almost think of Brandon Lee as being as an actor more so than an action star, even though he is very good as the action kind of centerpiece. A lot of depth as an actor, and very. I always, whenever I saw interviews with Brandon Lee, I always got the sense that he was kind of an old soul. He died very young, and it was I mean, it was a horrible situation. I remember when the Crow came out, it happened before the movie, I believe, was even finished, and he accidentally got killed on the set during some kind of shooting sequence where there were supposed to be blanks, but there were actual bullets in the gun, and he actually died on the set. And it made the whole experience of seeing this movie initially just so tragic and hard to watch because of the whole story of the Crow, the essence of the story, life and death, and it was so ironic and just tragic, and how young he was and the potential that he had as an actor. And he performs so incredibly well in this movie. He is the Crow. It, cements his status as one of the greats. And so it was just such a weird, you know, time of seeing. I remember when the movie came out, and it was a huge box office hit. But it again, it just had this weird cloud around it because of the scenario. And now, like now, I can watch this film and really enjoy it, and I don't get the sense of that anymore. And again, when I talked about The Crow in my previous in that show where I had talked about the weird and strange parallels between Brandon Lee and Heath Ledger, it was truly strange and eerie. That part of it I thought a lot more about when I watched this film because there are so many scenes and frames in this movie where there are so many parallels between their portrayal of the Joker and of the Crow. It's very odd, and they I believe they're both close in age when they died, and they both died basically when the film was being finished, or and in Brandon Lee's case, and then with Heath Ledger dying right before the premiere of the film, overdosing. Just a horrible situation. And I think with Heath Ledger again, he had such an incredible range and depth as an actor. So, but as a whole, this movie really is incredible. I mean, it really is. The other thing that I was blown away by this movie because again, it's been shit years, like 20 years. I can't remember the last time I saw this. I did when this came out. I did see this movie a bunch of times. I got really into this movie, I think, and I think I saw it a bunch of times on DVD. I've never owned it, and I've never seen it on Blu-ray. And I have to say, seeing this movie on Blu-ray is absolutely incredible. I felt again, there's a time when I saw this movie all the time, but it had been so long, and I never got to see it on Blu-ray. And when I watched it last night, I've talked about that kind of feeling before, or those feelings before, but this really was like seeing it for the first time. It was, I forgot a lot of the film, but there were a lot of things that I did remember, and I was blown away by it. The other thing that I forgot about was how dark this movie is. Like it's really raw, and it's really dark. I forgot. I mean, I always knew, of course, the Crow, of course, is a very gothic character and a tragic character in a lot of ways, but yet very heroic. But I forgot. I forgot how you know how dark the and how violent this movie is. It's great. I mean, it still holds up so well. I mean, it's hard to believe it came out in '94. But it's an incredible movie, and seeing the transfer of this movie on Blu-ray is absolutely incredible. The writing for this film is just incredible. The cast, I forgot how great the cast is. Of course, Brandon Lee, Rochelle Davis, Michael Wincott is amazing as the head villain. I forgot that he was in it. Sophia Shinas, Michael Massey, Bai Ling is also one of the head villains. David Patrick Kelly, Ernie Hudson, who plays the one of the main characters, who is the cop. Awesome, just awesome. And it was directed by Alex Proyas, who is the same director, I believe, who directed Dark City, which is actually a really awesome movie as well. Very, very dark. That's a movie I want to revisit. But he directed the Crow, and I forgot about that. And I do own Dark City. I think I own it. I think I have it on Blu-ray. But very, very cool movie. Highly stylized, highly original, sci-fi kind of noir horror with definitely a horror element or horror elements. But The Crow is, it's kind of kind of a masterpiece. I was blown away by how great it is. And again, it's a little bit dated because again, it's from the '90s. It's got this little bit of a dated quality to it, but it totally works for it. Sometimes, like I've talked about that with certain films. I mean, obviously '94. It's a very long time ago, but it's not. You know, I always talk about my favorite films, my favorite decade being the '70s, and I love those films that come out in the '70s. I also watch lots of films from the '80s, and of course, movies always have a certain dated quality, and sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes it really does work. I see it. I always find it really works, especially in the exploitation world. It works as a kind of an attribute for the film, but sometimes it doesn't. One movie I did a review on that I thought was a movie that I did like a lot when I was a kid, but watching it now, I just could not get into it, and it was dated, and of course, the subject matter was ripped. I mean, right from today's headlines, but everything else around it was just so ham-handed, and that is Falling Down with Michael Douglas, which came out in '93, I believe. So right, a year before The Crow, and that movie is so dated that to the point of where I don't feel it works. It kind of gets in the way of the movie, and I don't think that movie's aged well at all. But The Crow aged. I feel like watching after I watched it last night. It ages like fine wine. I mean, it's I almost. I mean, again, it's been so long since I've seen it, but I thought, wow, I almost enjoyed it more now than I ever have before, especially seeing it on Blu-ray, and just an immaculate quality with the sight and sound. It's so beautifully shot. The sequences are great, but it does have a little bit of a dated quality. It isn't from the '90s, but it's an example of where I think it totally works in that context. The other thing that's so great is the music. The music, the Crow soundtrack. I remember back in the day when this film came out. I was in high school when this came out, and I remember back in the day, the soundtrack was one of the most popular soundtracks. Everybody had it. Everybody was into this movie, and it had so many great bands, and I forgot how great the music is. It's got Stone Temple Pilots. It's got Nine Inch Nails, The Cure. So many great bands. So many great bands. Helmet is in it. Is on the soundtrack. And the editing for this film is just incredible. The use of the music is just awesome. But I always remember throughout the years that it would come up every now and then where people would talk about the Crow soundtrack as being, one of the most iconic, one of the best, rock soundtracks for a movie, and it really is. And the use of the music, the way they place it, is just perfect, and just adds so much to the film, and it's just fabulous, really fabulous. But I was, so this all came about after seeing the article about the announcement and the new photo for the new Crow and all of the controversy that kind of spawned, and it rekindled my interest to buy this. And so I'm kind of grateful that happened because I was able to get this, and I got this ridiculously cheap, like amazing. Bull Moose has, again, I've gotten so many incredible movies there for like just incredibly low prices, and it's just great. It's just great. So I was super psyched to have this for $5, and yeah, definitely the best experience I've had around this movie, and a movie that I think truly gets better with time. Like fine wine, it's so kick ass, and I highly recommend people seeing this, especially on Blu-ray. I hear this movie talked about, obviously, and it's something that really, still really, really, people are really passionate about. but I don't really hear people talk about the Blu-ray edition of this film, or how they've seen the film. So amazing, amazing. I highly recommend the Blu-ray. I think there's probably, I didn't come across it, but I only came across this edition, which, in all intents and purposes, it's kind of a standard Blu-ray, but it's actually really, really great. I was totally into it. There might be some kind of collector's edition out there, like a box set, I would imagine, because of how popular this movie is and iconic it is. I didn't see any. They only had this edition. They had this edition, and it was various prices. There was a bunch that were 13 or 14 bucks, and then I got the real cheap one, and it had the same exact amount of content on it. So I really lucked out. And I think that this was used, but it doesn't seem like it was. So 1994, what an iconic movie. And speaking of comic book movies, I think it's one of the best adaptations of a comic book character probably ever made. So amazing, amazing movie. I wish, I wish movies in the comic book world. And granted, the Crow is a very dark character. It's very gothic, and so it is a very dark world that that the Crow dwells in. But I just wish, like, I love how gritty this film is. I loved how gritty it was watching it last night, and how kind of raw this movie is. And I just wish, there's not a lot of comic book movies that have that kind of rawness to it. Like, this was a big kind of budget action movie at the time, but it just feels like none of the more recent comic book movies they don't have this kind of rawness to it. There's nothing really gritty about them, and I just wish that more Marvel movies, with all the freaking Marvel movies that exist, and there are really great ones, don't get me wrong, but it's been a very, very long time since there's been any quality Marvel movies. I just wish they would, like, make them a little bit grittier. I don't know what it is, but this was great. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.